Hello, everyone. So, we are so close to the War for Independence, but we need to talk about the Coercive Acts of 1774. So, in response to that great Boston Tea Party, the British government decided to create the Boston Port Bill, which closes the harbor. Now, if you can't get goods in and out of your harbor, your economy is going to suffer, and certainly that's what happened. The Massachusetts Government Act revoked the colony's charter and restructured it according to what the British Parliament wanted, not what the colonists wanted. The Administration of Justice Act moved trials of British officers out of the colony. That was a big deal. So that meant that if an official, say a tax collector, decided to steal a cow, that person, he would, instead of being tried in whichever colony that happened, he would actually be tried out on a ship out in the harbor. He would be under the British jurisdiction, not the Americans' jurisdiction. And then the Quartering Act. This act is important because it's going to play into part of the Bill of Rights, which are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, of course. The Quartering Act meant that soldiers could be housed in vacant, privately owned buildings, any of them, and you really did not have a choice. Now, some of them could charge, sometimes you could charge rent, but generally speaking, it was not expected. Also, the Quebec Act creates a government for Canada, and what the colonists saw this as tyranny, being told what to do, being taken, having what they believed certain rights to govern themselves taken away from them. They also believed it was a British plot to destroy the liberty of the colonists. All of this legislation was labeled the Intolerable Acts by the colonists, and the elite of the colonies sent delegates to discuss the situation at what was called the First Continental Congress of 1774. This was elite colonists coming together, white men, coming together to discuss what they wanted to do about all of these horrible acts that had been inflicted on them. So they demanded the repeal of the Coercive Acts. The colonial elite denied Parliament's right to pass any laws at all for the colonies, not just those that affected their internal affairs. The representatives also agreed that the colonies had the right to tax and legislate themselves, that Parliament had no right to pass any laws concerning the colonies, not just internal affairs. The colonists must stop all trade with Britain. What's going to happen is we're going to have the Daughters of Liberty come in, and they are going to non-consume British products. They're going to create their own products, homespun. They're going to buy only American-made products. They're going to promote or encourage the production of American-made only products, and that's what they're going to buy instead of British. The First Continental Congress also believed that they should form a community of leadership to persuade the colonists that they were a separate people with their own interests. In other words, they were going to try and weed out the loyalists from, the loyalists are those that are royal loyalists, and those who are Americans. Ben Franklin at this time created one of his posters that said, that had the snake cut up, and you will either be part of us or not part of us. Which do you want to be? They also said they had the right to mobilize militia to protect their own military supplies and depots, the Minutemen, because they were able to get ready in a minute. They raised 20,000 troops. Now, of course, this was illegal, but the British made no moves to suppress these troops. They thought, well, if the colonies want to try and take care of themselves, and we don't have to pay for it, whatever. Now, this is going to spill into the Bill of Rights again as the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment was supposed to be about creating your own militia units, kind of like a National Guard. It was not about arming just anybody to be able to kill or defend. It was, now of course people could have guns for hunting, that was a given, but it was not necessarily that everybody should have their own guns. It was in order to protect the colonies. All right. They also believed that importing and purchasing British goods would be banned. And so that's what they did. Again, goes back to the Daughters of Liberty. Now, the Continental Association was created to enforce this ban, and the Continental Association's committees of observation gained sovereignty by enforcing the boycotts, enforcing what is called public virtue, in other words, stopping people from bear baiting, cockfighting, gambling, overly drinking, and so on. They repressed opposition, and they harassed the loyalists. Later on, there's going to be an act that is going to be pretty insidious, where if you say the wrong things, you could be turned in by your neighbor. It gets pretty icky later on. Okay, so the elite now had to share power with the people. The assemblies collapsed. Governors and councils were now powerless. So that didn't work. Continental Association, Continental Congress did not work. All right, now again, here's the 1774 Quartering Act. You can read about it yourself. One of the reasons why the colonies were creating their own identity as Americans instead of British is through this little pamphlet, this little booklet by a man named Thomas Paine. It's called Common Sense. Now, what he was writing is that it's our God-given natural right to be able to be who we want to be. That we are born free. We are allowed to be allowed to pursue, allowed to be free to have liberty to take care of our families, and so forth. They wanted to bring things back the way it was before 1754. They wanted to basically be free to do as they wish, but have the military protection of the British Empire without paying for it. Okay. Now, there was an olive branch petition in 1775, but it fell on deaf ears. So it didn't work. Did not work. So finally, July 4th, 1776, we have the Declaration of Independence. This was written chiefly by Thomas Jefferson, who, as you know, owned slaves and in fact was fathering children through Sally Hemings, his wife's half-sister. So it was based on the ideals of the Enlightenment and Republicanism. That's why you read John Locke and Enlightenment. Remember, John Locke had certain ideas of what freedoms every man, white man, should have. And that's why you had that worksheet. Okay, now also, Republicanism. So Republicanism is the idea that we are all independent entities, that we come together as a colony. We decide that we're going to have so-and-so represent us and have our best interest at heart. And then those people, those elected people, are going to come together, say, in the as the Constitution up here. Continental Congress, and those people are going to they're going to have our best interest at heart, like I said, and then together as a whole, as a unit, as a republic, then we are strong. So again, the concept of universal natural rights, of course, it did not apply to women, enslaved people, or Native Americans, only white men who had property. All of this is based on social contract and government being based on the consent governed. It goes back to the Enlightenment and common sense that this is just who we are, that it is unnatural to be subjects of an absolute tyranny, that it is not who we are. It's not how nature or God made us to be. Now, talking about God, the early founders were not religious per se. Okay, they were deists, D-E-I-S-T-S. They followed deism, D-E-I-S-M. The idea that God came here, created the planet, put things in place, created nature, created everything that we needed, and then went off to do the same somewhere else. There is not a God that we can call upon. There's not a personal God or a personal relationship with God. It's not like what many of Christianities have today. It's more of an attached, distant idea of a God. But that God had created all of this for us. Now, what are we going to do? Are we going to take it and run with it? Is it our divine right to have this land? Does God have our backs when it comes to Indians? And that's the reason why we are winning. We white men are winning all these battles against the French, against the Indians, against whoever. Well, maybe it's because God has our back. Remember, it goes back to also a form of Puritanism where you don't know if you're chosen, but you have a pretty good idea as to whether or not you're chosen if things in life go easy for you, or if things go the way you want them to go. You probably are happy, or God is happy with you. All right? Now, later on, it's going to be called His Divine Providence. The idea, again, of divine giving, divine having set this up for us, and then we know whether or not God still has our back. God is going to help us. God is interested in how in our affairs insofar as what we do with what God has created. Okay, so again, July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence, and now we're going to go into the war. So that's the next podcast. Thanks.